Good afternoon and welcome to another lesson in mathematics where we will be looking at how to convert units of volume. In our previous lesson, we were looking at conversion of units of area, and in this subtopic also we are just going to be dealing with these units of volume. As you know, units of volume, they are basically derived units from the basic units of measurement, that is length. That is where we obtain these units of volume. They are actually derived from those ones. Some of the units that we are going to deal with, they are like a kilometer cubed, meter cubed, centimeter cubed, millimeter cubed, and some special units. Some of the common units. Common units of volume, they are like cubic kilometers, cubic meters, cubic centimeters, and even we can have the smaller units, cubic millimeters. But we also have some special units that are used when we are calculating matters to do with volume, some special units in volume. One milliliter is equal to 1 cubic centimeter, and also 1 liter, which is equal to 1000 cubic centimeters. Just like the way we did in our previous lesson, we tried to come up with a chart that can help us to move from one unit to another during conversions. So we want to discover on how do we move from cubic kilometers to cubic meters, and even from cubic meters to cubic centimeters, and lastly to cubic millimeters. These are the four basic units that we would like to start with. And to do that, we are going to start with looking at the basic units. Like the basic unit, before we arrive at a cubic kilometers, we know that this unit is derived from a kilometer. A kilometer. So if we were to have 1 kilometer, and we want to know how many meters do we have in a kilometer, we have 1000 meters in a kilometer. What if we were to have 1 cubic kilometer? A cubic kilometer basically means we have 1 kilometer multiplied by another kilometer 3 times, then multiply by another kilometer. This will give us kilometer cubed. It is just like having a container like this one. In this container, we can talk of the length being 1 kilometer, the width being 1 kilometer, and also the height being 1 kilometer. So that this will give us a kilometer cubed. But we have agreed, even from our first lesson in measurement, that a kilometer is made up of 1,000 meters. So this length, even the width and the height, we can replace or we can substitute them with a meter. This will be 1,000 meters. This is 1,000 meters. And the height is also 1,000 meters. So the same can be done here, so that we can have 1,000 meters multiplied by 1,000 meters multiplied by 1,000 meters. So that when we multiply this will give us this will give us 1 billion cubic meters. A kilometer is equal to 1 billion cubic meters, and this we said that it can be written as 1,000 cubed. 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 cubed meters, 1,000 cubed meters. So that if you were to have some figure expressed in cubic kilometers and you want to change to cubic meters, then it means you are going to multiply by 1,000 cubed. This basically means you multiply that figure, whatever figure that you will be having, you multiply by 1,000 cubed to get this. And you know that 1,000 cubed is the same as 1 billion. It is the same as 1 billion. We can also go ahead and try to come up with a multiplying factor when we want to convert from cubic meters to cubic centimeters. And this can be done from the basic units. We first of all establish the relationship between a meter and a centimeter, and we know that 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. 1 meter is equivalent to 100 centimeters, such that if we were to have 1 cubic meter, this means we are going to have 1 meter multiplied by 1 meter multiplied by another meter. If we were talking about this figure here, we will have, if this figure is 1 cubic meter, we will have 1 meter here, another meter. The length is a meter, the width is 1 meter, and even the height is 1 meter. So this, we can convert this to centimeters so that we can identify the relationship between 1 cubic meter and the centimeters that there is. This will be the same as 100 centimeters multiplied by 100 centimeters multiplied by 100 centimeters, which is equivalent to 1 million cubic centimeters. And this can be expressed as 100 cubed, so that the multiplying factor when you are converting from meter cubed to centimeter cubed, this will give us multiply by 100 cubed. So that to convert from cubic meter to cubic centimeters, you multiply that figure by 100 cubed, which is the same as a million. And lastly, let us identify the multiplying factor when we are converting from cubic centimeters to cubic millimeters. We know that 1 centimeter is equivalent to 10 millimeters. 1 centimeter is equivalent to 10 millimeters. So that if we were to have 1 cubic centimeter, this will be equivalent to 1 centimeter multiplied by 1 centimeter multiplied by another centimeter. And we can convert this to millimeters. This will be equivalent to 10 millimeters multiplied by 10 millimeters multiplied by 10 millimeters. This ultimately will give us 1000 cubic millimeters, which can be expressed as 10 cubed. 10 cubed or 10 raised to power 3. This is 1000 raised to power 3, this is 100 raised to power 3, and this is 10 raised to power 3. So that our multiplying factor here, when we are converting from cubic centimeters to millimeter cubed, we will multiply by 10 raised to power 3. So these upper arrows are basically showing us what happens when you are converting from a larger unit to smaller denominations or the smaller units. And just like the way we did with the units of area, conversion of units of area, we can also have a situation where we are required to convert from cubic millimeters to cubic centimeters, and even from cubic centimeters to cubic meters, and finally from cubic meters to cubic kilometers. This lower root is also allowed. You will discover that when this happens, when we convert from the smaller units to larger units, we will be dividing the same factor that is used when we are converting from larger ones to smaller ones. So this will be divided by 10 raised to power 3, which is 1000. This will be divided by 100 raised to power 3, which is a million. And this will be divided by 1000 raised to power 3, which is equivalent to a billion. So this flowchart will come in handy when we'll be dealing with actual division, actual conversions from one unit to another, from either the larger big ones to the smaller ones, or from smaller units to larger units. This chart, you need to take note of it. I now want us to move on and look at some examples, some examples on conversion. We look at examples, and the first example, we are required to convert these volume measurements to the units shown in the brackets. Convert volume measurements or units to the ones shown in the brackets. To the ones shown in the brackets. Part A, we need to convert 3.72 cubic centimeters to cubic millimeters. You will realize that in this example, we are required to convert from a larger unit because we know that cubic centimeters is larger than cubic millimeters. So we are converting from a larger unit to a smaller unit. This will make us perform some multiplication by a certain factor, and that factor is indicated on that flowchart that we have just learned some moments ago. So you will realize that 3.72 cubic centimeters, when we want to change this from centimeters to millimeters, we multiply by a factor of 10 raised to power 3. This will be 3.72 multiplied by 10 raised to power 3 to convert it to cubic millimeters. And we have just learned that 10 raised to power 3 is the same as 10 times 10 times 10, which is equal to 1,000. And performing this multiplication of any number or even a decimal number by a number that has zeros like this, it is just like moving this decimal point some places. Those places that the decimal point is going to move is equal to the number of the zeros that we have. So we have, how many zeros do we have? 1, 2, 3. It means our decimal point is going to move 3 places to the right. This will be 3,720 cubic millimeters. By so doing, we have converted our decimal number 3.72 cubic centimeters to 3,720 cubic millimeters. This is our first example. Let us move on and look at another example. We need to convert this number, the number 4,300 cubic centimeters to cubic meters. 4,300 cubic centimeters to cubic meters. In this second example, you will realize that we are required to convert from a smaller unit, which is a cubic centimeters, to a larger unit, which is a cubic meters. This, we are supposed to perform some division by a certain factor that we have already established earlier on in this lesson. So 4,300 cubic centimeters. To convert this to cubic meters, we are going to have 4,300 divided by, you can confirm from your flowchart that to move from centimeters cubed to meters cubed, you divide by 100 raised to power 3. And this is the same as 4,300 divided by 1,000,000 divided by 1,000,000, which will ultimately give us 0. When we are dividing this number by 1,000,000, we assume that we have a decimal, our decimal point is in front here. in front of this last 0. So division by a million, it means we are going to move the decimal point to the left 6 places. We are going to move it to the left 6 places, and if we do that, we are going to have 0.0043 cubic meters. Cubic meters. This is our second example. Let us look at some more examples. Let us look at an example that entails our special units of volume, that we convert 247 cubic centimeters to liters. Cubic centimeters to liters. When we are talking about liters, milliliters, deciliters, those kind of units, in other words, we are basically talking about the capacity of a given container. The capacity. We will be moving away from volume to capacity. We have two terms, volume and capacity. We will be moving from volume to capacity. This is what we are talking about. And we have just learned that 1000 cubic centimeters are equivalent to 1 liter. Are equivalent to 1 liter. So if we have 247 cubic centimeters, this will be equal to how many liters? We can perform some cross multiplication. This can be 247 cubic centimeters multiplied by a liter, divide everything by 1000 cubic centimeters. And when you do that, you'll discover that these units will cancel. Cubic centimeters and cubic centimeters will cancel out, leaving us with the liter being the ultimate unit to the figure that we will have. 247, when you divide by 1000, we will move the decimal place once, twice, 3. Then we will have it here. Then a 0 there. This will give us 0.247 liters. So 247 cubic centimeters are equivalent to 0.247 liters. This is what we have. Let us have some more examples. Part D. We want to convert this decimal number, whose units is in cubic kilometers, to another figure or another value whose units will be in cubic meters. This is 0.015 cubic kilometers. We want to convert to cubic meters. So if we were talking about a certain container, let us assume that we have a cuboid. A cuboid is basically a figure whose length, width, and height are all the same. So that this container, we assume it is 1 cubic kilometers. 1 cubic kilometer. So that its length is 1 kilometer, the width is 1 kilometer, and even the height is 1 kilometer. Remember, this can be replaced with meters. How many meters do we have in a kilometer? Just the way we did at the beginning. This is 1,000 meters. This is equivalent to 1,000 meters. And this one is also equivalent to 1,000 meters. So that when you multiply a kilometer by another kilometer, you get 1 cubic kilometer. The same can be done. You multiply this, and that, you'll get 1 billion cubic meters. So we want to convert from this larger unit to a smaller unit. What do? We need to perform some division, and that division will be this established factor of division, which is 1,000 cubed. So this will be equal to 0. We are converting from a large unit, we are converting from a larger unit to a smaller unit. We are going to multiply by that factor, 1,000 cubed. This will be 0.015 multiplied by 1,000 cubed, or 1,000 raised to power 3. This number is a big number. 1,000 raised to power 3 is equivalent to 1 billion. So when we try to write it like this, is some form of shortening it. So when you multiply this by 1 billion, it will give us 15 million. This will give us 15 million cubic meters. This will give us 15 million cubic meters. So the number 0.015 cubic kilometers is equivalent to 15 million cubic meters. Let us look at another example. Part E, we now want to convert 28,300,000 cubic meters to cubic kilometers. Kilometer cubic. We want to convert from a smaller unit to a larger unit of measuring volume. This is where division by a factor of 1,000 raised to power 3 is supposed to be done. This will be 28,300,000 divided by 1,000 raised to power 3. Divided by 1,000 raised to power 3, and 1,000 raised to power 3 is equivalent to 1 billion. So when you divide this number by 1 billion, it is going to give us 0.028 cubic kilometers. This is one way in which we can do that. Or we can also look at it using a container. The container concept is very important to help you understand what you are dealing with. So if this was 1 cubic kilometer, so it means the length is a kilometer, the width is a kilometer, and even the height is a kilometer. So this is the same as 1,000, meters. This is the same as 1,000 meters. And even the height is equivalent to 1,000 meters. So this factor of 1,000 is what we are dividing with. This is 1,000, this is 1,000, this is 1,000. This is where we are getting 1 cubic kilometer being equal to 1,000 raised to power 3 cubic meters. This is where we are coming up with this division or multiplication factor. Let us look at a different set of examples. In the first set of examples, we've just been looking at how to convert from one unit of measuring volume to another. That is from the larger units to smaller units, and vice versa from the smaller units to the larger units. In this second example, let us look at how to get the sums. And in finding the sums, you will realize that you are provided with several sets or a given number of units of volume, and you are supposed to find their sum. Just like the way we did in the conversion of units of area, you don't just go ahead and perform the addition, but there are two things that you are supposed to do. The first thing we did in that lesson was for us to ensure that all the units are in conformity with the units that are provided in the brackets before we proceed to the second step of addition. So let us look at this. Find the sum of the following and express your answers in the units given in the brackets. Find the sum of the following and express. Part A, we need to find the sum of 0.00051 cubic kilometers, 27,300 cubic meters, and we should express our answer in cubic meters. Looking at the two values, one of the values 27,300, its unit is in conformity with the units we have in brackets. But this first value, this first figure, which is 0.00051, the unit to this value is in cubic kilometers. So we need to convert this to cubic meters before we perform the addition. This 0.00051 is a big unit. This is a bigger unit. We want to convert to a smaller unit. What do? We have learned that for us to do that, we multiply by a factor which is 1,000 raised to power 3 or a billion. This is 0.00051 multiplied by 1,000 raised to power 3 or a billion, and this will give us 510,000 cubic meters. Having converted that, we now move on and add this figure to this. So 0.00051 plus this one we have already converted it. This will be 510,000 cubic meters. We now add on to 27,300 cubic meters. This can be added directly, or you can decide to arrange the two numbers in column form before you perform the addition. But if you have a calculator, you just punch in these values and the calculator automatically will give you the answer. And this will be this will give us 537,300 cubic meters. This is one of the examples in the second part we were to look at. Let us look at another example. Part B, we are going to look at how to find the sum of 482,000 cubic millimeters and 2.5 cubic centimeters, and our answer should be expressed in cubic millimeters. We first of all look at the values that we have. These figures that we have, this one is already expressed in cubic millimeters. The second part is in cubic centimeters, so we need to convert it to cubic millimeters before we perform the addition, just like the way we have done it in the first part. We are again moving from a larger unit to a smaller unit, so we multiply by this one. We are going to multiply by a factor of 10 raised to power 3. This is the same as 2.5 multiplied by 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000, giving us 2,500 cubic millimeters, so that we can now find the sum. This is 0, 0 plus 0. 0 plus 0, we get another 0, 0 plus 5, 2 plus 2, 4. This is 8, we bring it down here, and 4 down there. So this will be our answer. 484,500 cubic millimeters. Let us look at one last example on this second part. We want to find the sum of 0.0052 cubic kilometers and 0.320 cubic meters, and our answer should be expressed in cubic millimeters. Now, this last example on finding the sum is a bit interesting, because when you look at the two values that we have been provided with, their units, all of them are not in conformity with the units in brackets in which our answer should be expressed. So what do? We convert this to cubic millimeters and also this to cubic millimeters before we add them. Now this 0.0052 cubic kilometers, when we convert this is equivalent to 0.0052. Since we are moving from a larger unit to a smaller unit, which is cubic kilometers to cubic millimeters, we have several stages. From cubic kilometers to cubic meters, then from cubic meters to cubic centimeters, and lastly from cubic centimeters to cubic millimeters. So just the way we did in our last lesson, where we were converting the units of area, we were to convert this to cubic meters. We have agreed that we are going to multiply by a factor of 1,000 raised to power 3. So this figure, by the virtue of being multiplied by this 1,000 raised to power 3, it is already converted to cubic meters. Then to move on, or to convert it from cubic meters to cubic centimeters, we multiply by another factor which of 100 raised to power 3, which is 1,000,000. So this entire number, when we multiply with these two factors, we will have converted it from cubic kilometers to cubic centimeters. And lastly, to convert from cubic centimeters to cubic millimeters, we multiply by a factor of 10 raised to power 3. This is 1,000,000,000, this is 1,000,000, and this is 1,000. When we multiply through, this will give us So this is the figure we have. A very huge number. And also in our previous lessons, we said that writing such a numbers in this form is a bit cumbersome, so it is advisable that we can rewrite this number in standard form, and this will be the same as 5.2 multiplied by 10 raised to power raised to power 16 cubic millimeters. So these are a bit logical. This number is a bit short. So we have converted this. We now move on and convert the second bit, which is 0.320 cubic millimeters. This will be the same as 0.320. To convert to cubic centimeters, we multiply by 100 cubed, and then to convert to cubic millimeters, we multiply by 10 cubed. This will give us 320. This will give us 320 billions. So we need to add this. But before we add, let us express this in standard form. Raised to power 11 cubic millimeters. So having converted the two into the units in which our answer should appear, the form of the answer, we now proceed with addition or the sum. This is 5.2 plus 3.2 multiplied by 10 raised to power 11. And this will give us, when we do that, to perform this addition in a simpler way, we can factor out. Instead of factoring out, let us just perform the addition. This is 5.2 times 10 raised to power 16 plus 3.2 times 10 raised to power 11 . This will give us this will give us 2.704 times 10 raised to power 33 cubic millimeters. And lastly, I want us to look at one last example on the entire topic on conversions. We convert 2 cubic centimeters to cubic millimeters. This is just the way we have been performing. We want to convert from a larger unit to a smaller unit. This will entail some multiplication. Two multiplied by 10 raised to power 3, which is the same as 2 multiplied by 10 multiplied by 10 times 10, which is 1,000, and this will give us 2,000 cubic millimeters. This will give us 2,000 cubic millimeters. So having looked at all these examples, where we have been looking at conversion of units of volume, and we started by saying that some basic units of volume are like cubic kilometers, cubic meters, cubic centimeters, and cubic millimeters. We also mentioned some special units of volume, which are a liter, which we actually said that that 1 liter is equivalent to 1,000 cubic centimeters, and also we say that 1 cubic millimeter is equivalent to 1 cubic centimeter. What is important is that these units, when we are talking about conversions of units, it is very important, especially in the field of medicine, such that when doctors are giving prescriptions, they don't give overdose or an underdose to patients. It is just a funny scenario which can turn to be very catastrophic. Let us talk of maybe someone was supposed to be given a dose of medicine for a certain malady, and the doctor was supposed to write something like 0.1 grams or even milliliters, 0.1 milliliters. And instead of writing 0.1, the person goes ahead and writes 1.0 milliliters. You will discover that this is catastrophic because it is an overdose to the tune of 10 times, because for us to get this, we multiply this by 10, which is actually very catastrophic. So it is very good that you acquit yourselves with conversion of units, be it the units of length, area, or volume that we have just learned, so that when we are dealing with them, we know what we are doing. So having talked about that, I now want to give you an assignment that will try to look at when you are revising. In this assignment, I'm going to give you some questions. Convert the following units of volume. Convert the following units of volume. Zero 0.2 cubic meters to cubic centimeters. We also need to convert 5,700 cubic millimeters to cubic centimeters. You can also convert, this is some special units, 152,000 milliliters to cubic meters. You can also look at 2 cubic meters. You convert that to liters. And you can go ahead and find the sum. Find the sum of the following. Bado kangapi? You can go ahead and find the sum of 0.036 cubic kilometers and 632 cubic meters, and you express your answer in cubic meters. This marks the end of our lesson. I hope you have understood, and I now invite you to our next lesson where we will be looking at the accuracy of measuring instruments. The accuracy of measuring instruments. Thank you and welcome.